Vespasian, originally named Titus Flavius Vespasianus, certainly a pivotal figure in Roman history through his decisive role in restoring stability and prosperity to the empire, following the relative chaos of the year of the four emperors, that being 68 to 69. As the founder of the Flavian dynasty, Vespasian ascended to power in AD 69, leveraging his extensive military experience and pragmatic leadership to quell rebellions and consolidate imperial authority. And so his reign, spanning from 69 AD to 79, is notably marked by significant infrastructural advancements, most prominently the commissioning of the Flavian Amphitheatre, which is now commonly known as the Colosseum, something that of course survives as a symbol of Rome's architectural ingenuity, but also its social grandeur. But he also implemented crucial fiscal reforms that stabilized the economy, including the introduction of the fiscus judaicus and the reorganization of the imperial finances, which enhanced the empire's economic resilience in very uncertain times. Additionally, his efforts in rebuilding and expanding Rome's infrastructure, including public buildings, roads, aqueducts, and many more, showed again his commitment to urban development and the welfare of the people he ruled. A pragmatic approach to government, characterized by both military strength and economic prudence, a reign that earned him widespread respect among not only the Senate, but the populace too. And welcome to the channel. I hope that if you are new to the channel, you found the introduction to your liking. And those returning, it's good to see you again. As always, the best way to support the channel is just to enjoy it in whatever capacity you deem fit. But a like, subscribe, and a comment always helps grease the wheels on the algorithm too. It'll make both of us happy. Now, without further ado, let's jump right in. Vespasian was born in the village of Falacrine, located northeast of Rome. His mother was Vespasia Pola, and his father was a tax and debt collector, no doubt very popular, the life of all the parties. Now we get most of our information from the work of Suetonius, who left us with quite a nice little biography. So I'm going to dive right in to the work of Suetonius, which describes a little bit about Vespasian's mother, his early life, and just about how he was as a young boy and how this affected his later reign. So we now read from Suetonius. Pola, who was born of an honorable family at Nursia, had for father Vespasius Pollio, twice tribune of the soldiers and prefect of the camp, while her brother became a senator with the rank of praetor. There is moreover on the top of a mountain near the 6th milestone on the road from Nursia to Spoletium, a place called Vespasiae, where many monuments of the Vespasii are to be seen, affording strong proof of the renown and antiquity of the house. I ought to add that some have bandied about a report that Petro's father came from the region beyond the Po River and was a contractor for the day laborers who came regularly every year from Umbria to the Sabine district to till the fields, that he settled in the town of Reate and there married. Personally, I have found no evidence whatever of this, in spite of rather careful investigation. Vespasian was born in the Sabine county in a small village beyond Reate called Falacrina, on the evening of the 15th day before the calends of December, in the consulate of Quintus Sulpicius Camerinus and Gaius Pompeius Sabinus, 5 years before the death of Augustus. He was brought up under the care of his paternal grandmother, Tertulla, on her estates at Cosa. Therefore, even after he became emperor, he used to constantly visit the home of his infancy, where the manor house was kept in its original condition, since he did not wish to miss anything which he was wont to see there, and he was so devoted to his grandmother's memory that on religious and festival days he always drank from a little silver cup that belonged to her. End of the first account from Suetonius, and we will be going back and reading more parts of Suetonius, because it's just such a fantastic biography. So, we know that he received his education in the rural area of Cosa, which is near present-day Ansedonia in Italy, under the tutelage of his paternal grandmother. Consequently, even after ascending to the throne, as Suetonius had said, he frequently returned to this place and preserved his villa in its original state, like a kind of monument to his childhood. In his early years, he was somewhat eclipsed by his elder brother, Titus Flavius Sabinus, who engaged in public life and followed the cursus honorum, commanding a significant military position in the Danube region. To qualify for praetorship, Vespasian required 2 terms of service in the lesser magistracies, one in a military capacity, and the other in a civic role. Vespasian served in the military in Thrace for approximately 3 years. Upon his return to Rome, around 30 AD, he secured a position within the lower magistracies, the Vigintivirate, most likely overseeing sanitation, these kinds of issues. Certainly good experience for him when he was going to repair the aqueducts at a later date. His initial performance was so inadequate, however, that Emperor Caligula allegedly filled his toga with handfuls of filth to address the neglected Roman streets, which were officially his duty. That's one way to send a message to an employee. Throughout Sejanus's rise to power, there is no documentation of Vespasian participating in really anything notable, at least in terms of political manners. Upon concluding his term in the lower magistracies, Vespasian was eligible to run for the position of quaestor, a senatorial office. However, his absence of political or familial influence resulted in Vespasian serving as a quaestor in a provincial position in Crete, rather than as an aide to prominent figures in Rome. Not the job that he wanted, but stepping stones, of course. Subsequently, he required the acquisition of praetorship, which conferred imperium. However, non-patricians and those with lesser connections were obliged to fulfill at least one intermediary position, whether that be aedile or perhaps tribune. Vespasian's initial endeavor to secure an aedileship, however, was unsuccessful, but he did achieve success in his subsequent attempt, attaining the position in 38 AD. Notwithstanding his minimal familial ties or accomplishments in office, he attained praetorship in either 39 or 40, at the youngest permissible age, that being 30 years old. Yes, there was an age limit, amidst a tumultuous political climate, of course, regarding electoral organization. his enduring association with the woman Antonia Caenis, the confidential secretary to Antonia Minor, who was, by the way, the emperor's grandmother, and a member of the emperor's court, rather. Well, that may have facilitated the success. Once more, its friends in high places tend to be able to wriggle your way to the front a little bit. Following the ascension of Claudius to the throne in 41, Vespasian was designated legate of Legio II Augusta, located in Germania, due to the patronage of the imperial freedman Narcissus. In 43, Vespasian and the Second Augusta took part in the Roman invasion of Britain, where he reportedly excelled under the supreme command of Aulus Plautius. Following his involvement in significant initial confrontations on the Medway and Thames River, he was dispatched to subdue the southwest, advancing through the contemporary counties of Hampshire, Wiltshire, Dorset, Cornwall, and a few more, likely aiming to secure the southern coastal ports and harbours, as well as those coveted tin mines of Cornwall and the silver and lead mines of Somerset. From there, Vespasian advanced from Noviomagus Reginorum, modern-day Chichester, to conquer the antagonistic Durotriges and Dumnoni tribes, seizing 20 Oppida towns, likely hill forts, including Hod Hill and Maiden Castle in Dorset. After this, he invaded Vectis, which was the old Roman name for the present-day Isle of Wight, ultimately establishing a fortress and a legionary headquarters at Isca Dumnoniorum, modern-day Exeter. He sustained an injury, however, during this period, and he didn't fully recover until his arrival in Egypt. Of course, these were quite a few achievements, and they granted him a triumphal regalia upon his return to Rome. His triumph as the legate of a legion secured him a consulship in 51, after which he withdrew from public life, having provoked the animosity of Claudius's wife Agrippina, the most powerful and influential figure of her husband's reign, not someone who you wanted to get on the bad side of. He emerged from retirement in 63, when he was appointed governor of the province of Africa, and that's quite a lot of responsibility, because that's where all the grain comes from. Tacitus characterized his rule as infamous and odious, whereas Suetonius described him as upright and highly honorable. Tacitus is generally pretty harsh on people. Suetonius recounts an incident where Vespasian was actually bombarded with turnips. Vespasian utilized his time in North Africa judiciously. Ex-consuls typically regarded governorships as opportunities to extract substantial sums of money to recuperate the wealth expended on their prior political campaigns. Corruption was so incredibly pervasive that it was nearly anticipated that the governor would return from these appointments with his pockets filled with coin. Nevertheless, Vespasian utilized his time in North Africa to cultivate relationships rather than accumulate wealth, a pursuit that would prove significantly more advantageous in the future, playing the long game. While in North Africa, he encountered financial difficulties and was compelled to mortgage his estates to his brother. In an effort to restore his fortunes, he engaged in the mule trade and acquired the moniker Mulio. Not sure if that's a good moniker to have or not. While upon returning from Africa, Vespasian accompanied Nero on a tour of Greece, but he fell out of favor with the emperor after allegedly neglecting to pay adequate attention, some accounts even suggesting that he kept being caught sleeping on the job, especially at one time where he was actually sleeping during one of Nero's famous lyre performances. Don't want to fall asleep doing that, resulting of course in political marginalization. Well, in 66, Vespasian was designated to quell the Jewish insurrection which was occurring in Judaea. The conflict resulted in the death of the former governor and the defeat of Cestius Gallus, the governor of Syria, during his attempt to re-establish order. 2 legions, accompanied by 8 cavalry squadrons and 10 auxiliary cohorts, were dispatched under Vespasian's command, while his elder son, Titus, arrived from Alexandria with an additional force. During this period, he became the patron of Flavius Josephus, a Jewish resistance leader apprehended at the siege of Jodhat, who would subsequently document his people's history in Greek. We still have this to this day. It's used as quite a interesting source. Ultimately, thousands of Jews perished in the revolt, and the Romans obliterated numerous towns to reassert control over the province. They also captured Jerusalem in AD 70. Now Josephus, writing as a Roman citizen in his work Antiquities of the Jews, depicts Vespasian as a just and compassionate official, in contrast with the infamous Herod Agrippa II, whom Josephus extensively vilifies as a tyrant and a villain. During the emperor's patronage, Josephus documented the following the destruction of Jericho by the Roman Legio X Fretensis, led by Vespasian on the 21st of June, year 68. Vespasian captured a group of Jews, presumably Essenes from Qumran, bound them, and cast them into the Dead Sea. Why did he do this? Well, he wanted to test this reputed buoyancy of the Dead Sea. While the captives surfaced after being cast into the water from the boats. Science. Mission accomplished, I suppose. At the conclusion of the Jewish War, Josephus referenced a prophecy from sacred scripture, indicating that at the time of Jerusalem and the Second Temple's destruction, an individual from their own nation would assume the role of governor of the habitable earth, which is basically akin to the Messiah. Josephus construed the prophecy as signifying the administration of Vespasian. Tacitus concurred that the prophecy pertained to Vespasian and also to Titus, but he asserted that the common people, with their usual blindness of ambition, had interpreted these mighty destinies of themselves and could not be bought even by disasters to believe the truth. Of course, we arrive to the year 68, and Nero dies. In this year, Rome experienced a series of ephemeral emperors and a year of civil conflict and confusion. Galba was assassinated by Otho's supporters. He didn't last long, and he was subsequently vanquished by Vitellius. Otho's adherents, seeking an alternative candidate, chose to endorse Vespasian. Suetonius reports that a prevalent prophecy in the eastern provinces asserted that future world rulers would emerge from Judaea. Vespasian ultimately concluded that this prophecy pertained to him and discovered several omens and oracles that corroborated this conviction. Despite Vespasian and Titus's decision to contest the Principate in February 69, they took no action until later in the year. During the initial months of 69 AD, Vespasian frequently conferred with the eastern generals, Gaius Licinius Mucianus, was a significant ally of his. Mucianus, the governor of Syria and the commander of 3 legions, maintained political affiliations with numerous influential Roman military leaders, from Illyricum to Britannia, due to his service under the renowned Neronian general Gnaeus Domitius Corbulo. In May 69 AD, Mucianus officially urged Vespasian to confront Vitellius. His appeal was succeeded by Vespasian's formal declaration as emperor in early July of the same year. Following directives from Prefect Tiberius Alexander, the legion stationed in Alexandria pledged allegiance to Vespasian on July 1st. Vespasian's Judean legions promptly followed on July 3rd, succeeded by Mucianus's Syrian legions on the 15th of July. Vitellius, the reigning emperor, commanded the veteran legions of Gaul and the Rhineland. However, support for Vespasian was rapidly intensifying, leading the armies of Pannonia, Illyricum, and Moesia to declare allegiance to him. Of course, if you've got the military on your side, that's the pointy end of the stick, thereby establishing him as the de facto ruler of half the Roman Empire. And who's going to argue? While Vespasian was in Egypt securing the grain supply, his troops, led by Marcus Antonius Primus, entered Italy from the northeast. They vanquished the forces of Vitellius, stationed in Mevania and Bedriacum, plundered Cremona, and proceeded towards Rome. Vitellius swiftly negotiated a peace with Antonius. However, the emperor's Praetorian Guard compelled him to maintain his position. Following intense and bloody combat, the forces of Antonius made a full invasion upon Rome. Amidst all the ensuing chaos, the capital was consumed by the flames, and Sabinus, Vespasian's brother, was slain by an angry mob. Rest in peace to poor old Sabinus. While upon learning of his rival's defeat and demise in Alexandria, the emperor promptly dispatched essential grain supplies to Rome, accompanied by an edict pledging to annul Nero's laws, particularly those concerning treason. Get a few people off the hook on that one, I'm sure. During his time in Egypt, he also visited the temple of Serapis, where he apparently had a vision of his greatness. Subsequently, he was approached by 2 laborers who believed he possessed a miraculous divine power. And that was, of course, all the proof that he needed. Tiberius Julius Alexander served as the Praefectus Aegypti, having held the governorship since the reign of Nero, and on the 1st of July, 69 AD, he declared Vespasian emperor in Alexandria. The prefect was of Hellenized Jewish lineage, Hellenized being Greek, the word Hellenic meaning Greek, and was connected to Philo of Alexandria. Now, the significance of the Egyptian grain harvest, which in Latin is known as claustra annone, really key to the grain supply, to Rome enabled Vespasian to consolidate authority over the entire empire. If they didn't want him to be emperor, the grain gets cut off. So you either accept him or you all starve to death. Well, there's only really one way to go for that, isn't it? And so Vespasian was the inaugural emperor, and pharaoh, by the way, since Augustus, to actually visit Egypt. At the Alexandria Hippodrome, he was acclaimed as pharaoh, reminiscent of Alexander the Great's reception at the oracle of Zeus Ammon in Siwa Oasis. Vespasian was declared the progeny of the creator deity Amun. Emulating the ancient pharaohs, and an embodiment of Serapis in the tradition of the Ptolemies being the Macedonian Greek family that ruled over Egypt for many dynasties. In accordance with Pharaonic tradition, Vespasian exhibited his divine selection through the customary acts of spitting on and trampling a blind and disabled man, whom he subsequently healed miraculously, as asserted by Egyptian religious authorities. Not sure about that one. If anybody has tried this, please let me know in the comments. Vespasian was officially proclaimed emperor by the Senate on the 21st of December, 69, while he was in Egypt, following the enactment of the Lex de Imperio Vespasiani. The Egyptians had previously declared him emperor in the summer. It was only a matter of time until the Senate followed suit. The administration of the empire was temporarily entrusted to Mucianus, with the assistance from Vespasian's son, Domitian. Mucianus initiated Vespasian's reign with tax reforms aimed at revitalizing the emperor's finances. Following Vespasian's arrival in Rome in mid-70, Mucianus persistently urged him to maximize tax collection. This ought to be interesting. So Vespasian and Mucianus reinstated previous taxes and spent quite a good deal of time discussing how they could make up completely new ones, augmenting provincial tribute as well, and they also closely monitored the treasury officials. Now, the Latin proverb means pecunia non olet, meaning money does not stink, might have actually originated when Vespasian put a tax on urine in public toilets. Like I said, they were trying really, really hard to find every possible way to do new taxes. Well, prior to Vespasian, this tax was instituted by Emperor Nero in the 1st century AD. I suppose it wasn't completely his idea, but it was abolished for a period and reinstated by Vespasian around AD 70 to replenish the treasury. Of course, the policy was poorly received by his son Dio Cassius and Suetonius. In their historical accounts, Vespasian noted, when Titus found fault with him for contriving a tax upon public conveniences, he held a piece of money from the first payment to his son's nose, asking him whether the odor was offensive to him. When Titus said no, he replied, "Yet it comes from urine." Now, going to back to this whole urine thing, I know I don't want to talk about it too much, but, well, it's kind of important. It's an eccentricity, isn't it? That phrase, "money does not stink," has been employed to obfuscate the questionable or illicit origin of funds ever since. It is a little bit debatable whether this was the true origin of the phrase, but it seems pretty obvious that it was. Prove me otherwise, I suppose. Well, in the early 70s, Vespasian remained in Egypt, the origin of Rome's grain supply, and had not yet departed for Rome. Tacitus reports that his journey was postponed because of the inclement of weather. Contemporary historians propose that Vespasian had secured and was maintaining support from the Egyptians prior to his departure. Accounts of Vespasian's miraculous healings, of course, disseminated throughout Egypt. But you can never get away with the unpopularness of taxes. Protests erupted in Alexandria, resulting in delays in grain shipments. Vespasian ultimately re-established order, however, leading to the resumption. But we'll read a little bit from Suetonius about his time in Egypt. and, well, how things got a little bit out of control for him. Therefore, beginning a civil war and sending ahead generals with troops to Italy, he crossed meanwhile to Alexandria to take possession of the key to Egypt. There he dismissed all his attendants and entered the temple of Serapis alone to consult the auspices as to the duration of his power. And when after many proprietary offerings to the gods he at length turned about, it seemed to him that his freedman, Basilides, offered him sacred boughs, garlands, and loaves, as is the custom there. And he knew well that no one had let him in, and that for some time he had been hardly able to walk by reason of rheumatism, and was besides far away. And immediately letters came with the news that Vitellius had been routed at Cremona, and the emperor himself slain at Rome. Vespasian as yet lacked prestige and certain divinity, so to speak, since he was an unexpected and still new-made emperor. But these were also given him. A man of the people who was blind, and another who was lame, came to him together as he sat on a tribunal begging for help for their disorders, which Serapis had promised in a dream, for the god declared that Vespasian would restore their sight if he would spit upon them, and give strength to the leg if he would deign touch it with his heel. Though he had hardly any faith that this could possibly proceed, and therefore shrank before making the attempt, he was at last prevailed upon by his friends, and tried both things in public before a large crowd, and with success. At this time, the direction of certain soothsayers and vases of antique workmanship were dug up and consecrated at the spot of Tegea in Arcadia, and on them was an image very like Vespasian. So I do rewind a little bit there, but I just love going back to Suetonius. Well, of course, the popularity did not last for too long. Alongside the insurrection in Egypt, turmoil and civil conflict persisted throughout the remainder of the empire. Judaea had been in revolt since 66. Titus, the son of Vespasian, ultimately quelled the insurrection by capturing Jerusalem and demolishing the Jewish temple. Eusebius states that Vespasian commanded the pursuit of all descendants of the royal lineage of David, resulting in the persecution of Jews across various provinces. Numerous contemporary historians propose that Vespasian, informed by Josephus of his prophesied ascension to emperorship while in Judaea, likely responded to prevalent messianic prophecies of the era to mitigate any potential rival claimants from that lineage. Titus participated in the consecration of a new Apis bull in Memphis in 70, and during Vespasian's reign, imperial patronage was extended to Egyptian temples, including those at Dakhla Oasis in the western desert, as well as Esna, Medinet Habu, and Silsila in the Nile Valley. In contrast, the Jewish temples were not so lucky. The Jewish temple at Leontopolis was plundered in 73. Back on the continent, in January of year 70, a revolt transpired in Gaul and Germany, referred to as the Second Batavian Rebellion. The insurrection was led by Gaius Julius Civilis and Julius Sabinus. Sabinus, asserting his lineage from Julius Caesar, proclaimed himself Emperor of Gaul, and Vespasian did not like that. The insurrection vanquished and incorporated 2 Roman legions before being quelled by Vespasian's son-in-law, Quintus Petilius Cerealis. At the conclusion of 70 AD, it was all over. Better luck next time. Moving into the mid-70s, Vespasian initially arrived in Gaul, commencing his tribunation from years July 1st, 69. Vespasian promptly initiated a series of measures to maintain his authority and avert subsequent insurrections. He presented gifts to numerous individuals in the military and a significant portion of the public. Troops loyal to Vitellius were either dismissed or penalized. Vespasian reformed the senatorial equestrian orders by expelling his adversaries and incorporating his supporters. The regional autonomy of Greek provinces had also been abolished. Furthermore, he undertook substantial efforts to manage public perception of his governance. And you know what that means. Numerous contemporary historians observed the profligation of propaganda during Vespasian's rule. A facet of the propaganda was the theology of victory, which justified the entitlement to govern through triumphant conquest. This pertained to Vespasian's triumph in Judaea, of course. Narratives of a supernatural emperor designed to reign permeated the empire. Approximately 1/3 of all the coins minted in Rome during Vespasian's reign commemorated military triumphs. The term vindex was eliminated from coins to avoid evoking memories of the insurrectionist by the same name. Construction projects featured inscriptions lauding Vespasian and denouncing preceding emperors. A temple of tranquility was erected in the forum as well. Vespasian sanctioned histories composed during his life, guaranteeing the elimination of biases against him. Fortunately, we have both Suetonius and Tacitus, who provide us with differing perspectives. Now, initially, Vespasian provided monetary incentives to authors. The ancient historians of the era, including Tacitus, Suetonius, and Josephus, express a favorable view of Vespasian, while also denouncing the preceding emperors. Tacitus is a little less favorable, though. He acknowledges that Vespasian elevated his status, while Josephus designates Vespasian as a benefactor and savior. Simultaneously, Pliny the Elder devoted his natural histories to Titus, the son of Vespasian. Individuals who opposed Vespasian, of course, faced retribution, and several Stoic philosophers faced accusations of corrupting students through improper teachings and were subsequently expelled from Rome. Helvidius Priscus, a pro-republican philosopher, was executed for his doctrines. Many philosophers and writers had their works confiscated, destroyed, and were condemned for being considered excessively critical of Vespasian's rule, with some even facing this fate after their death. And so from 71 to 79, a significant portion of Vespasian's reign remains a little bit of a mystery. Historians indicate that Vespasian commissioned the construction of multiple edifices in Rome. Moreover, he endured multiple conspiracies directed at him. He facilitated the reconstruction of Rome following the Civil War, and that was a big job. He incorporated the Temple of Peace and the temple dedicated to the deified Claudius. In 75, he constructed a monumental statue of Apollo, initiated during Nero's reign, and he consecrated a stage of the theater of Marcellus. He commenced the construction of the Colosseum, utilizing resources acquired from the plunder of the Jewish temple following the siege of Jerusalem. Suetonius asserts that Vespasian faced persistent conspiracies directed at him throughout the reign, but only one of them is specifically known. In 78, or perhaps 79, Epidus Marcellus and Aulus Caecina Aelianus conspired to assassinate Vespasian. The reasons for these men's betrayal of Vespasian unfortunately remain a bit of a mystery. Now, we have a little bit more from Suetonius about the personality of Vespasian, or at least how Suetonius saw his personality. And we'll read now from that before we lead off for the video. He was well built, with strong, sturdy limbs, and the expression of one who was straining. Apropos of which a witty fellow, when Vespasian asked him to make a joke on him, also replied rather cleverly, "I will, when you have finished relieving yourself." He enjoyed excellent health, though he did nothing to keep it up except rub his throat and other parts of his body a certain number of times in the court, and to fast one day every month. This was in general his manner of life. While emperor, he always rose very early, in fact before daylight. Then, after reading his letters and all the reports of all the officials, he admitted his friends, and while he was receiving their greetings, put on his shoes and dressed himself. After dispatching any business that came up, he took time for a drive, and then for a nap, lying with one of his concubines, of whom he had taken several after the death of Caenis. After his rest, he went to the bath and dining room, and it is said that at no time he was more good-natured or indulgent, so that the members of his household eagerly watched for these opportunities to make requests of him. Not only at dinner, but on all other occasions, he was most affable, and he turned off many matters with a jest, for he was very ready with sharp sayings, albeit of a low and buffoonish kind, so that he did not even refrain from obscene expressions. Yet many of his remarks are still remembered, which are of full fine wit, and among them the following. When an ex-consul called Mestrius Florus called his attention to the fact that the proper pronunciation was plaustra rather than plostra, he greeted him the next day as Flaurus. When he was importuned by a woman who said that she was dying for love with him, he took her to his bed and gave her 400,000 sesterces for her favors. Being asked by his steward how he would have the sum entered in his accounts, he replied, "To a passion for Vespasian." During his 9th consulship, Vespasian experienced a minor illness in Campania. He promptly returned to Rome, and subsequently traveled to Aquae Cutilae in the vicinity of Raete, where he spent each summer. It was here where his condition deteriorated, and he passed away of severe stomach issues. And that's it, the life of Vespasian. And so before we go, as is customary, I will thank the top-tier patrons and supporters: Dark, Kerry, Kimberly, Ember, Ben, Britt, Charles, Aaron, James, Jeffrey, Melissa, Scott, Stark Factory, Wendy, Jaden, Sherry, Jessica, Christine, Sally, Katiana, Christine, Fizabo, Legitmus, Maverick, Susan, Dr. Nero, Nerd, Cameron, Alexander, Nicholas, Daniel, and JR. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next video. As always, lots of love to you all. Good night, and farewell.